Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Xiang. Truth or dare? The truth is China has been conducting a across-the-board genocide in Xinjiang. The dare? Will the rest of the world dare to challenge China? An independent report finds that China's government is deliberately trying to destroy the Uyghur ethnic group, contravening every provision of the Genocide Convention that it has ratified. Up to 2 million Uyghurs have been detained in camps in the northwestern province, and former detainees have testified to indoctrination, sexual abuse, and forced sterilization. China denies human rights abuse and says the centers counter religious extremism and terrorism. In Washington, few doubt what is going on. On its last day, the Trump administration declared a genocide. President Joe Biden came to an identical conclusion while he was a candidate. Now the US response is on him. But the world has struggled before to mobilize against genocide, even in small nations without China's vast clout, like Bosnia or Rwanda. In this case, there is no chance of a military response to stop the torment of the Uyghurs. And while nations could make trade with China conditional on improvements in human rights, few political leaders will hurt their own economies to make such a point. David Schaefer, a former US ambassador at large for war crimes issues, suggested that one punishment could be to label goods from Xinjiang as the product of forced labor or a genocidal nation. Targeted measures like sanctions on individual Chinese government figures are still an option, and repeated condemnation of Beijing across all levels of diplomacy could seek to shame and publicly embarrass China into changing its behavior. But such a campaign will come up against issues common to every point of contention between Xi Jinping's hardline government and its adversaries. From Beijing's crackdown on pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong to espionage in the West and the violations of global trade norms. Is China now so powerful, rich, and dedicated to an authoritarian course that it is impossible to shame and impervious to change? So far, there's not much stomach for a boycott of the Beijing Winter Olympics in 2022, a point of leverage given the game's propaganda value to China. Handing China the world stage for a contest that is supposed to be conducted for the good of all humanity to promote fellowship among nations will be nothing more than a soft power win for Chinese Communist Party. It seeks to lie and manipulate the rest of the globe for its own benefit at the expense of freedom, justice, and human rights. Pressure is mounting on Biden administration to step up and lead. National figures from Nikki Haley, former US ambassador to the United Nations, to more than a dozen members of Congress, as well as international allies including Dutch and Canadian lawmakers, have echoed the need to hold China accountable for its abhorrent human rights violations and ongoing acts of genocide. Ironically, former Japanese Prime Minister Yoshiro Mori was fired by the Tokyo Olympics Planning Committee last month after making sexist remarks about women talking too much in meetings. At the height of the controversy, the IOC, International Olympic Committee, issued a statement labeling its remarks absolutely inappropriate and highlighting the IOC's progress in promoting equality of the sexes, a basic human right of profound importance and a fundamental principle of the Olympic Charter. But the IOC has a massive moral blind spot: the widespread and systematic abuse of women by China, which will host the 2022 Winter Games in Beijing. In January 2021, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo determined that these and other abuses amounted to genocide. more than 160 human rights organizations have written the IOC calling for it to move the 2022 Games because of China's human rights abuses. In response, the IOC has ducked responsibility and claimed that awarding the Olympic Games does not mean that the IOC agrees with the political structure, social circumstances, or human rights standards of the host country. The IOC's invocation of political neutrality is nothing new, but in the case of China, the IOC knew what it was getting into. The 2008 Summer Olympics, also in Beijing, were a festival of broken Chinese promises on human rights, and China has since become even more repressive. Yet, the IOC seems more concerned with not embarrassing Xi Jinping than with his regime's human rights violations. Rule 50 of the Olympic Charter states that no kind of demonstration for political, religious, or racial propaganda is permitted in any Olympic sites, venues, or other areas. This rule serves simultaneously as the basis for selectively ignoring political controversies and a threat that keeps Olympians in line. Last year, the IOC issued Orwellian guidelines for Rule 50 in order to maintain that athlete activism is an existential threat to the Games. Operating under a similar mindset, the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee in August 2019 gave hammer thrower Gwen Berry and fencer Race Embolden a one-year probation in response to their anti-racism protests. But what happened when the Olympics themselves are one giant propaganda demonstration? Today, the IOC's situational insistence that the Games are outside politics is a boom for the Chinese Communist Party and other human rights abusers. The IOC and its corporate sponsors are hoping to elide mass internment, systematic rape, and forced sterilization for silencing athletes and repeating Chinese assurance that the principles of the Olympic Charter will be respected in the context of the game. As long as Mr. Xi doesn't make crude sexist jokes, the IOC will give him a pass on brutalizing women in Xinjiang. If there is a game of hypocrisy, IOC will sure win the championship. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I will see you again shortly.